Welcome to the Heal from Your Narcissist podcast, your go-to guide for everything you need to know about narcissistic personality disorder and narcissistic abuse. Get ready to dive into understanding what drives narcissistic behavior and to learn clinically proven techniques for healing from the effects of narcissistic abuse with your host, best-selling author, and registered psychotherapist, Heather Kent.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 4 today of the Heal from Your Narcissist pop-up podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I am so excited to be here today because we are going to be getting into some strategies to share with you. So now that we understand the impact that our toxic relationships with a narcissist has had on the physiology of our brains, I know, right? It's kind of mind-blowing. But now that we understand that, today's episode is going to be focused on some quick relief tips and clinically, scientifically proven strategies to help cope with and relieve some of our ongoing PTSD symptoms. And so to start the healing process from what we've gone through, we first must focus on number 1, self-care and attending to our basic needs. Now, as a highly successful, competent, confident, intelligent woman, I'm sure you've heard a lot about the importance of self-care. You have a concept of what it is. And we talk about it a lot in the media, and you're aware of it. You might even promote it to some of your employees in your business or at work. But we might not really ever stop to reflect on what that actually means for us in our personal lives. So if we were to ask, okay, what is self-care? So we go to Google and we Google, okay, what is self-care? And Google will tell us that it is the practice of taking an active role in protecting one's own well-being and happiness, particularly during times and periods of stress. Okay, so in other words, self-care is any activity that we do on purpose to take care of our mental, emotional, and physical health. When we are faced with significant distress in our lives, for example, ending a narcissistic relationship and starting a new life, these are the times when self-care is the most important. It also happens to be the time when we feel the least like doing it. So after I decided to end my abusive relationship and leave my narcissist ex-husband, I was a complete emotional and physical wreck. My tank was below empty and I was just running on vapor, on fumes, and my sleep was pretty much non-existent. I didn't really have an appetite, but I still had to go to work and show up for my students and show up for all the things that I was doing. I was coaching teams and I was doing extracurricular volunteer groups for the school. I was involved in the school's international baccalaureate program. Of course, I had to do my day-to-day teaching, deal with the challenging school environment and, racially charged scenarios that were happening outside of the classroom. I had a lot going on, and I still had to show up and do all those things, much as you do in your very successful, high-level professional lives. And sometimes you might also be parenting through all of this. And so just making the decision to leave the relationship, or maybe the decision was made for you, but the ending of the relationship itself and then going through with sticking to that took such a significant toll on my mental, emotional, and physical well-being. I was an absolute mess. And my therapist at the time can certainly attest to that. And so I completely know how this feels. And I do get what you may be going through. That said, though, it's important to mention that there is no therapist in the world or doctor who can treat or cure events that happened to us in the past. So what happened to us can't be undone, but we can focus on healing those imprints and the impact of trauma on the body, on our mind, and on the soul. those heavy sensations in your chest that you may identify as anxiety or depression, the fear of losing control, the fear of not being safe, being always on alert for danger, maybe the guilt and the shame that we're carrying, the nightmares, the flashbacks, and that fog, the brain fog that keeps us from staying on task and being able to engage fully in what we're doing during the day, being unable to fully open our hearts to another human being. Trauma robs us of the feeling that we are in charge of ourselves. And, we might have elements, we're in charge at work. We've got our, professional lives all intact. We're high performing and high functioning at work, but at home and in our personal lives, it's so hard to feel like you're in control of it. And so the challenge of healing and recovery from these relationships is to reestablish ownership of our bodies and our minds and of ourselves. And so first step in doing this is taking care of ourselves. And so it was in therapy where I learned the importance of taking care of myself, but I was so depleted and just pulled in so many directions at that time that I didn't even know what that meant really. And I didn't know where to begin. I might have had basic understanding. Okay, I need to eat good and I need to sleep, but I mean, how can I make that better? Right? So maybe you're feeling the same way. So I want to spend some time exploring this today. So how do we know what kind of self-care that we need? So one way to help you to focus on the aspects of taking care of yourself that might be missing is to do a little bit of an assessment or a self-care questionnaire. So to help you with this, I've included a sample questionnaire in the show notes of this episode that you can click on the link to go to it. And it is created by the Institute for Functional Medicine. So feel free to use this one, or you can search for another one that you feel would be most helpful. So the benefit of completing a self-care survey like this is that it makes it really easy to see the areas where we're already doing pretty well and the areas where we might be deficient and where we need to fill in the gaps of how we need to take care of ourselves. So where do we focus our attention? Completing a survey like this or a questionnaire like this can help us to figure that out very easily. Okay, so what does self-care look like? You probably already know what this looks like, but sometimes it's harder to think about it when we're grappling with, what do I need to do? When it comes to ourselves, for some reason, it's harder to figure it out. And it's very easy for us to be able to see it and suggest it for other people. But it's more challenging for some reason to be able to identify it for ourselves. So I'm going to help you with that. So some examples of self-care activities show up in various categories. So we have actually different categories of self-care. So we have physical self-care, psychological self-care, emotional and spiritual self-care, professional and career self-care, and social and family self-care. So I'm just going to highlight a few examples of each of these for you right now. So if we look at what physical self-care might look like for you, we look at, of course, healthy and regular eating. So like balanced nutrition. We look at moving our bodies every single day. And I don't want to call it exercise necessarily because you don't have to exercise in order to have physical benefits. Moving your body in whatever way that you can for 30 minutes a day is the goal. And so maybe it's taking a walk, maybe it's stretching, maybe it's doing yoga, maybe it's playing with the kids outside in the backyard. Whatever you can manage to do that requires movement. That is what our goal is. Now, if you're a person who really enjoys exercise and likes to work up a sweat, perfect. You can work that into your schedule as well. But whatever it is, the most important thing is that we are moving our body. Next, of course, of paramount importance is getting enough sleep. And I have a feeling that this might be something that many of us are struggling with. It's certainly a symptom that every single client I've ever worked with, every survivor of narcissistic abuse has struggled with sleep. So this is a big one for a lot of women, and it was for me as well. And so this is one that probably will show up on your questionnaire as a bit of a deficit, but you might also be really good at it because some of our stress responses is to just sleep. So you're either not getting very much at all, or it's really broken, or all you want to do is sleep. So it can be, it is kind of one extreme or the other. Taking necessary medical care, going to medical appointments, dental appointments, eye appointments, all those sorts of things. And taking time off and resting your body. Psychological self-care looks like journal writing, writing down affirmations, positive affirmations, keeping a gratitude journal, for example, engaging in personal psychotherapy, doing some self-help reading or listening, as you are doing right now, listening to this podcast, and engaging in some self-reflective work and self-compassion work, because that is something that is hugely important. Developing self-compassion and the ability to be compassionate towards ourselves, because we have been through the ringer and we have been told repeatedly how wrong and off and terrible we are. And so cultivating a sense of self-compassion is of paramount importance to our psychological well-being and to our psychological health. Emotional and spiritual self-care looks like participating in activities that you enjoy. So that could be, for me, I love cooking. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. I love cooking. I love dancing. I love playing and listening to music. And these are all things that kind of got lost in the shuffle of being in an abusive relationship. I stopped doing all the things that brought me joy, that made me excited, made me happy. And so starting to kind of think back to, what are those things that I used to do that I love doing? Write them down and then maybe pick one to start trying to do again. So yeah, participating in activities that you enjoy, expressing feelings. So for example, sometimes you just need a good cry, like a real big cry in the shower kind of situation. Allowing yourself the opportunity to release that is extremely, extremely important. Spending time in nature, meditating or praying, however it is that feels comfortable for you, and singing is another example of cultivating emotional and spiritual self-care. In our professional and career lives, self-care looks like, now get ready for it, ladies, taking breaks, actual lunch breaks away from your desk, setting limits. So deciding I am not going to answer my emails past X time of day, chatting with coworkers and employees and team members about things other than work. Trying to find, that balance. And I know sometimes it's not possible because of whatever projects might be going on, or time of year, or end of quarter, or whatever it is that's happening. But generally speaking, striking a balance of your workload, being able to delegate tasks, and negotiating for your needs. In terms of social and family self-care, we are looking at things like, of course, spending time with the people close to you. Now, oftentimes after coming out of an abusive relationship, it might feel like you don't have anyone to spend time with because you have been incredibly isolated over the time of your relationship. And so that might feel really like overwhelming and scary. And so it might just be hanging out with your coworkers to start with, right? Spending time with people, if you have people in your life that are close to you, family members, old friends, even if you hadn't talked to them in a long time, asking them for help, engaging with a supportive network. Super, super important to engage in and create or build or go and seek out a supportive network. And so hopefully you're starting to see a clearer picture of what self-care can look like for you. Okay. Now, I want you to imagine that we are sitting together in our very first session, and I've asked you the following questions. How are you sleeping? What are you eating these days? How often are you able to move your body? What kind of things do you do to relax? So I want to invite you to write down answers to those questions. So, when you're able to, grab a pen and a piece of paper. Not right now if you're driving, but at some point, just jot notes down in your phone or whatever it is, have answers to those questions. So if you're currently in a state that is anywhere close to mine, when I first left my relationship, the answers to these questions are likely not great. And that's okay, because the focus is to start getting back on track, to feel better starting right now. And so there is so much that we can look at in terms of self-care for trauma healing. And there's an incredible book called The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. And you might have heard of it already, but if not, it's a heavy read, but it's excellent. And in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, he talks about regaining control over ourselves and needing to revisit the trauma, but in a safe and sort of healthy way. So at some point, we do need to confront what has happened, but only after we feel safe, and so that we won't be re-traumatized by it. And so the first step to do that is to find ways to deal with feeling overwhelmed by those physical sensations and the emotions that get triggered when we start thinking about the past. And so I'm going to talk about a few powerful self-care tools that have been clinically proven to help us to overcome those overwhelming feelings. So the first one is practicing positive affirmations. And you might be like, oh, that is so fluffy or fooey. But I'm telling you, clinical, scientific, medical research is backing this up. So this is all clinically proven strategies to help you. So to reprogram your subconscious mind, which has been, of course, as we know, deeply affected by the abusive words and actions that we've suffered, we have to reprogram our brain, right? Our brain is this complex computer, and we can reprogram it, but it takes time and it takes practice. And so we have to work at minimizing the negative, destructive, automatic thoughts that may come out every day that we're so used to thinking, because these thoughts are promoting our self-sabotage, and they are holding us back from embracing all of the power and control that we have to rebuild ourselves, from the inside out. And so many of these thoughts are not even our own, the negative thoughts that we have all the time. Rather, they are the voices of our abusers who continue to haunt us, even long after the abuse has ended. And so when we've been abused or mistreated in any way, we continue to abuse ourselves with these ongoing negative thoughts. And so we call this the inner critic voice, right? And everybody has an inner critic or a mean girl or whatever voice you want to call it, whatever name you want to give to it. And I do a lot of inner critic work actually with my clients because it is this destructive voice that is so incredibly damaging and a massive roadblock to our healing process. And so one powerful way to combat this voice is through using positive affirmations on a daily basis. And so the best way for this to work for you, though, is to create these statements that are tailored to your particular wounds and your particular insecurities. So, for example, a self-sabotaging thought about your appearance that your narcissist tried to instill in you suddenly becomes, I am beautiful inside and out. Whenever the harmful thought or the emotion associated with that memory comes up or that thought comes up, we combat it with, the opposite positive affirmation. And so you can say these things out loud to yourself several times a day. Don't worry, you can do it when you're alone. No one's going to think you're crazy. And eventually, we're going to work towards saying them to ourselves in the mirror. And thinking about that can feel pretty scary because talking to ourselves in the mirror is an intense experience, but mirror work is incredibly powerful. Don't worry though, you don't have to do that right away. All you might want to think about right now is making a list of affirmations that are specific to the negative ongoing thoughts that you have to kind of combat them and challenge them. The next tool that I want to share with you is practicing gratitude. And this is something I'm sure you've probably heard about lots. It's getting a lot of attention in the media and in the news. But again, it is scientifically proven over and over again that gratitude improves our psychological health because it reduces like a multitude of toxic emotions, ranging from frustration and regret and fear and shame and envy and resentment, feelings that can be really prominent in this time of transition in our lives after, the abusive relationship has ended. And if we don't do this work, these things could linger, and they may have lingered for you, for years, even years later. And so there's this really excellent gratitude researcher, and his name is Dr. Robert Emmons. And he conducted multiple studies on the link between gratitude and well-being. And so his research is really interesting because it supports that gratitude highly effectively increases feelings of happiness. And it has been found to reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression. So I was like, sign me up. Yes, please. Where do I get this? So similar to positive affirmations, practicing gratitude is a daily practice. And what I recommend to clients and what I practice is to focus on or look for 3 tiny things that happened each day that made you feel good in some way. And I'm not talking about the larger universal, I'm so grateful for, my home or for my children or my parents or my, amazing career. These are overarching kind of constants that we're grateful for. What I'm talking about is the smaller specific things that happen in each day that make you smile or make you feel like, that's so nice. And so we're looking at tiny moments that made you smile or made you feel satisfied. So for example, the warm feeling of sun in my face, the delicious latte you had this morning that just really hit the spot on your way into the office, receiving a nice message from a friend that you haven't heard from in a while, or something sweet that your kid did or said to you today. These are the things that I'm talking about. And you want to write those down however you want. There's apps for this, gratitude practice. I'm sure you could download that. If you're an app person, you can just jot them down in notes on your phone. You can get a gratitude journal. They sell really cute ones on Amazon, or you can just get a notebook and just write the date and 1, 2, 3, 3 small things that you're grateful for today. And you try and focus on different things. So like, you can't be grateful for the same latte every single day, right? It's really like those things that just stood out to you. And sometimes on the really dark days, it's going to be very difficult to think of these things. But this is the point, right? We're training our brains to focus on and look for the positive things that happen in a day. And it has a significant impact. Another great self-care activity is working on healing your mind through the body. And I love doing body work and talking about healing from the body because trauma lives in our bodies as well as in our minds because it gets trapped in our cells. And so it's very important that we find at least one form of physical outlet for our intense emotions. And so that's why I said moving our body once a day is key. And, because all the grief, the rage, the hurt, the confusion, all of those things that we likely feel in the aftermath of abuse and trauma need a place to go because they've been stored in our bodies the whole time. So moving the body in ways that we choose helps us to combat that feeling of paralysis that comes along with our trauma. And so we don't want to feel the numb and frozen feeling anymore, right? So for example, I love to run most of the time. I'm a bit of a fair weather runner. I don't like to run in the ice and snow because it's just too cold, but I love running, and I love to do it while listening to really empowering music that gets me pumped up and gets me excited. I love swimming. I love doing weightlifting programs, like online like exercise programs. And I also love to do yoga. But the key here is to do whatever it is, something that you're passionate about and love to do. And it's also very important not to overexhaust yourself or force your body into activities that you're not comfortable with. So many of my clients have found yoga, or like just even gentle stretching to start, to be very, very helpful in their process of healing because it incorporates deep breathing, movement, focusing just on what your body's doing and staying present and in the moment and focusing on the body's movements. And this can be very releasing. And at times you can find it could be a very cathartic experience. And so I often recommend this as a starting point of any kind of physical activity, because it can also become a way to reclaim our bodies and kind of take our bodies back for ourselves. And this is very powerful stuff. So above everything else, it is most important that we use the outlet of movement as an act of self-care and not self-destruction. So I've mentioned, of course, before, sleeping and rest, super important. According to the Mental Health Foundation, this is so interesting. Sleep is just as important to our health as eating, drinking, and breathing. Okay? So everybody knows that we can't live if we don't breathe. Sleep has been clinically proven to be as vital to our survival as breathing. And there's a reason why captors of people who are, kidnappers use sleep deprivation as a form of torture because it is a vital element to our survival. Sleep allows our bodies to repair and our brains to consolidate our memories and process information. Now, we also need all the help we can get in this department because our hippocampus has shrunk as a result of being exposed to prolonged abuse and trauma. And so sleep is so important because our brains and bodies need it to be able to rebuild, rejuvenate, and to heal. And it also allows us to think more clearly when we're awake. It allows us to have increased tolerance levels of stress, decreases our symptoms of anxiety, and decreases our symptoms of depression. Again, this is all scientifically, empirically validated information. There are some basic rules that I recommend for creating a sleep routine that is healthy, that will help you to get back on track to feeling more rested if this is something that you're struggling with. So number one, decide as much as possible on a set specific time to go to bed and to wake up each day. And sometimes it can be a challenge if you're for people who have shifts or crazy schedules. But as much as possible, having a consistent bedtime and wake up time each day is hugely important. Turning off the screens at least 1 hour before going to bed. So all of you smartphone users who like to do the scrolling while you crawl into bed, I am sorry to say that I am 100% serious about this. The data is in, and it says that screens are bad for your sleep. So we need to stop looking at them at least 60 minutes before we go to sleep. Instead, during that time, we can develop a routine that helps us kind of transition from the busyness of the day to rest. So things like taking a bath or a long hot shower, listening to relaxing music, having some sleepy time tea or some chamomile tea, reading a book, an actual book with pages, not an what do you call it? A digital book, and listening to a guided meditation for sleep. There are so many amazing apps out there now that offer free content. My absolute favorite app is called Insight Timer. Not only does it have over 100,000 free guided meditations on all different topics, it also offers live free yoga classes and talks on mental health. All of these things are free within the app. It is an amazing app. If you don't have it already, I highly recommend that you download it and check it out. But guided meditations for sleep each night is really, really helpful because it helps your brain to focus on something other than your racing thoughts or the to-do lists or the worries or the things you forgot. So you can also check out the Honest Guys on YouTube or Spotify and check out their playlists on their YouTube channel because they have a specific playlist devoted just to sleep. And again, you can search for all kinds of sleep meditations with specific filters like time limits, topics, male or female voice, etc. in the Insight Timer app. Avoiding recreational drugs, alcohol, and nicotine as much as possible because all of these things interfere with the body's ability to have a restful, deep REM sleep, which is what our bodies and brains desperately need right now. Creating a relaxing space for sleep. Now, this is something else that you might not like to hear, but if you have a TV in your bedroom, we need to take it out. And this is huge. Get a lamp or two with lower wattage light bulbs. Get a diffuser for essential oils if you enjoy that. Consider taking a melatonin supplement for a couple of weeks to help your body's natural circadian rhythm to get back on track. And you might want to also talk to a pharmacist about what the best option for melatonin is because there's all kinds of different kinds. And you don't need to make all these changes at once if it feels too overwhelming or too drastic, but start implementing them one at a time and adding in a new one like each week or two to see how your quality of sleep is changing over that period. And of course, fueling our body and our mind. So back to that, we're really focusing on the physical aspects here. So similar to how our body requires sleep to function, it also requires fuel. And so as we know, fuel comes in the form of food. So whole foods, natural vitamin and mineral supplements, plenty of water. This is the recipe for a well-functioning body and mind. So we're thinking of it as heading to the gas station and filling our tanks with premium fuel for our bodies, similar to what we put in a high-end fancy car, maybe a car that you own. Our bodies are not different from cars in the way that we need high-quality premium fuel because it makes all the difference in our output and what our bodies can do. And so what we eat directly affects the structure and function of our brain, and it ultimately impacts our mood. So just like that expensive, beautiful car, our brain functions best when it only gets premium fuel. So looking at high quality organic foods that contain lots of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, superfoods, these things nourish the brain and protect it from cell damage and help our parts of our brain that have been damaged to rejuvenate and return to the way they used to be. So just like the expensive car, though, our brain can be further damaged if we take in things that are not premium fuel. So if substances from low premium fuel, like what we get from fast processed or really refined foods, when they get to our brain, it has little ability to get rid of them. So diets that are high in refined sugars, for example, are very harmful to our brain. Multiple studies have found a correlation between a diet high in sugar and impaired brain function. So our brain is already working to recover from what we've been through. And so we're setting it up for failure if we're constantly feeding it a bunch of sugar. So this is even a worsening of symptoms for our mood disorders, such as depression and our anxiety. So if you're finding it hard to force yourself to eat right now, because I used to have that problem. I found it really hard to eat because I was so distressed and exhausted. I recommend trying something that is easy for your body to digest. Smoothies, for example, egg whites, possibly, full balanced ready-made meal replacement supplements from, high quality ingredients. So we're looking at 40% protein, 30% carbs, 30% healthy fats. These are all good options for getting that premium food into your body with minimum effort to prepare it for what your body needs to process it. So I love whole foods and I love to cook, but we can't always get everything we need just from our whole foods. And so sometimes also our lives, especially if we're highly successful, busy with work, we need some supplementation products to fill in the gaps. And we need to make that as easy as possible to get the quality nutrition. And so I like to use high quality nutritional supplements to kind of fill in those gaps during my day. And so you might want to visit with a registered dietitian or nutritionist to kind of get some advice on the best way for you to get some ideas on what would work best for your lifestyle. And of course, of utmost importance, we need to learn how to breathe. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that one in our next episode. But today we are focusing on implementing some small changes of self-care. What I would like to challenge you to do is to pick two things that we talked about, or two things that you can see on your questionnaire, and just start doing those two things today. And that is my challenge for you. So you might be feeling like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. I don't know where to start. If you need some help implementing some of these things, I would love to chat with you and to help you get started. So if that is something that you think could be helpful, please just head on over to my website and click on the link to book a consultation call with me. And again, my website is heatherjkent.com. And I will be looking forward to hearing from you and speaking with you and helping you to get started on your self-care routine. And I look forward to seeing you again in our next episode. Take care, everyone.
This has been another episode of Heal from Your Narcissist, where we help survivors of narcissistic abuse make sense of their experience and share clinical tools for healing. If you like today's show, be sure to share with a friend and leave a review on whichever platform you are listening from. And don't forget to connect with Heather directly at www.heatherjkent.com, where you can send her a message, follow her on social media, or book a one-on-one call to continue on your healing journey.